Google, set the bedroom light to white. Hello. Hi. Yeah. Sorry about this evening. Combination of had a meeting and I'm not feeling too great. So I do apologise for the delay. So there is no stream this evening for Sherlock Holmes, she says. I've got the batteries for this or for chapter 1, and I don't have them for both today. I think I disagreed with something that ate me. Oh, sorry to hear that, Kate. Are you in one of the areas currently experiencing entertaining weather? Hey, Jem. Yeah, Molly, yeah. I can relate, shall we just say, with all delicacy. Right. Did I just close the file I needed to get to? No. Oh dear, Drutty, what are you going to do? Hum-bum-dee-da. Springtime roller coaster between warm and cold. Ah. Yeah, it's always entertaining, isn't it? It's spring in the UK. This means we need shorts, boots, trainers, probably flip-flops for those who indulge, thermals, a t-shirt, a jumper, a hoodie, possibly a raincoat. Hat's optional, but I live in one of the windiest parts of the country, so that's unlikely. And sunglasses. So we get all the weather in one go. I can spell. Okay, let's put that in as that. Probably ought to list child endangerment, actually. So, how is everybody? Aside from, recovering from wounds and feeling a bit grumbly. Now, Techie, are you back from the dead? Because that would be lovely. His mammogram today went way off coffee after that. Oh, so glad to hear that. Very glad to hear that that went well. I'm waiting on my invitation for my first one. That'll be jolly. Right. Before I take down the start screen, so therefore I can... you have to avoid caffeine? What kind of torture is this? Yes, before I take down the start screen, and therefore I can mute this bit and edit it off, Some very good news on the role-playing front. Artalsorian have announced that the Witcher role-playing game they have had to put on hold while waiting to hear stuff from CD Projekt Red for the last couple of years is now making a move, and a new book of some description, as yet unstated, is going into production. So that is a fantastically good thing. It being one of the lines I have worked on previously and have thoroughly enjoyed running. Yeah, oh dear Kate, that's above and beyond, isn't it? Okay, so let's do this. Let's do that. Oh, good Lord. Stop messaging me. Right. Oh, for heaven's sake. So, why do I suddenly have that song from the end of Labyrinth? As the world falls down. Not the end of Labyrinth, it's the ball scene, isn't it? Right. Okay, if I can... I'm on Do Not Disturb. Apparently this does not apply. Everybody stop messaging me, please. Thank you. Right. Sorry. It was actually work related. Okay. Hallelujah. Where's my file? Right. Let's hope that that's right. And... yay. Okay, let's do a proper welcome to book club. Today we are starting to read The Phoenix and the Carpet by E. Nesbit. She was a prolific writer of children's books and also ghost stories, and I think murder mysteries, but I'd need to check that. And even her children's stories tended to include rather more peril than you might expect from something aimed at the younger generation. I don't think she was worried about imperiling people. So we have content warnings. We have content warnings for era-appropriate attitudes. This was written in 1904. Bear in mind at this time we were at the tail end of the British Empire. The class structure was firmly in place. That took a long old time to loosen up a bit. Nesbit was aiming her stories at the middle class. This does mean that the upper and lower, she quite often poked fun at slightly, and had them behaving in irresponsible or foolish ways. The family in both this and Five Children and It, which is the book that comes before, are pretty much of the upper class. Certainly upper middle. So you'll get things like their mother is away quite a lot at parties and coffee mornings and things. I believe art galleries are mentioned. Leaving the 5 children largely to entertain themselves with certain numbers of household staff. There is also in a later chapter, which we're not going to get to today unless I read really fast, a somewhat iffy, has not aged well section involving a island with copper-skinned natives and some fairly unfair assumptions the children make. But as I said, of the era, I don't think there's anything particularly egregious looked at objectively. I don't think it was any worse than anyone else. Recipe for Chaos, you have 21st cousin. 20! Bleed neck! As the eldest, you had to wrangle some situations. My mother was one of 5. I gather there was an awful lot of sisterly babysitting going on. Because she was the youngest girl and then had a younger brother. I gather there was basically a certain degree of hierarchy of who's looking after whom at any given time. I was quite glad it was always just me and my sister. I had enough trouble keeping an eye on her when I was of an age to so do. I don't know how she manages with 3. Your dad's one of 5 children, your mum's one of 3, but also has 3 stepbrothers, so when they had kids, oh boy. Yep, that would do it. That would certainly give you the selection box of cousins. Nice. Right. So, with those warnings in mind. What's that? Hello, what are you? Oh, right, okay. So, The Phoenix and the Carpet by E. Nesbit. I take it my audio, by the way, is okay. I haven't messed with it. Have you read it, Hiram? Techie, by the way, should be joining us, she says optimistically. Come on, Tech. Come on, Techie. You know you want to. Yay! Hello, Techie. Oh, I'm quite glad about that. I was getting slightly worried. Right, so we are bebotted, so to speak. And we are also live on YouTube. Play nice. The Phoenix and the Carpet by E. Nesbit. To my dear godson, Hubert Griffith, and his sister Margaret. To Hubert. Dear Hubert, if I ever found a wishing carpet lying round, I'd stand upon it and I'd say, take me to Hubert right away. And then we'd travel very far to where the magic countries are, that you and I will never see, and choose the loveliest gifts for you from me. But oh, alack and well a day, no wishing carpets come my way. I never found a phoenix yet, and Psammeads are so hard to get. So I give you nothing fine, only this book, your book and mine, and hers, whose name is by yours is set. Your book, my book, the Book of Margaret. E. Nesbit, Dymchurch, September 1904. Yes, I watched that adaptation of 5 Children and It. You should be okay. The Psammead only appears kind of off camera. It grants a couple of wishes. All you need to know is there is a wish-granting little fey thing of immortal age which met and got to quite like the children previously. But that's pretty much all the knock-on there is. Chapter 1. The Egg. It began with the day when it was almost the 5th of November, and a doubt arose in some breast, Robert's, I fancy, as to the quality of the fireworks laid in for the Guy Fawkes celebration. They were jolly cheap, said whoever it was, and I think it was Robert. And suppose they didn't go off on the night? Those Prosser kids would have something to snigger about then. The ones I got are all right, Jane said. I know they are, because the man at the shop said they were worth Thribble the money. I'm sure Thribble isn't grammar, Anthea said. Course it isn't, said Cyril. One word can't be grammar all by itself. You needn't be so jolly clever. Anthea was rummaging in the corner drawers of her mind for a very disagreeable answer, when she remembered what a wet day it was, and how the boys had been disappointed of that ride to London and back on the top of the tram, which their mother had promised them as a reward for not having once forgotten for 6 whole days to wipe their boots on the mat when they came home from school. So Anthea only said, Don't be so jolly clever yourself, Squirrel. And those fireworks look all right, and you'll have the 8pence that your tram fares didn't cost today to buy something more with. You ought to get a perfectly lovely Catherine wheel for 8pence. I dare say, said Cyril coldly, but it's not your 8pence anyhow. Oh, but look here, said Robert. Really now, about the fireworks. We don't want to be disgraced before those kids next door. They think because they wear red plush on Sundays no one else is any good. I wouldn't wear plush if it was ever so, unless it were black to be beheaded in if I were Mary Queen of Scots, says Anthea with scorn. Robert stuck steadily to his point. One great point about Robert is the steadiness with which he can stick. I think we ought to test them, he said. You young duffer, said Cyril. Fireworks are like postage stamps. You can only use them once. What do you suppose it means by Carter's tested seeds in the advertisement? There was a blank silence. Then Cyril touched his forehead with his finger and shook his head. A little wrong here, he said. I was always afraid of that with poor Robert. All that cleverness, you know, and being top in algebra so often, it's bound to tell. Oh, dry up, said Robert fiercely. Don't you see, you can't test seeds if you do them all. You just take a few here and there, and if those grow, you can feel pretty sure the others will be, Father told me, up to sample. Don't you think we ought to sample the fireworks? Just shut our eyes and each draw one out and then try them. Robert, Cynthia, Anthea, Robert, Cyril, Anthea, Jane. You've got a wide variety of names here. Helps keep your kids from blending into one giant kid smoothie. Well, there's an image. But it's raining cats and dogs, said Jane. And Queen Anne's dead, rejoined Robert. No one was in a very good temper. We needn't go out to do them. We can just move back the table and let them off on the old tea tray we played toboggans with. I don't know what you think, but I think it's time we did something, and that would be really useful, because then we shouldn't just hope the fireworks would make those bosses sit up. We should know. I'm just looking at the outrage in that. No, fireworks are an outside thing. Yeah. It would be something to do, Cyril owned with languid approval. So the table was moved back, and then the hole in the carpet that had been near the window till the carpet was turned round showed most awfully. But Anthea stole out on tiptoe and got the tray when Cook wasn't looking and brought it in and put it over the hole. Then all the fireworks were put on the table, and each of the 4 children shut its eyes very tight and put out its hand and grasped something. Robert took a cracker. Cyril and Anthea had Roman candles. But Jane's fat paw closed on the gem of the whole collection, the jack-in-the-box that had cost 2 shillings. And one at least of the party, I will not say which, because it was sorry afterward, declared that Jane had done it on purpose. Nobody was pleased. For the worst of it was that these 4 children, with a very proper dislike of anything even faintly bordering on the sneakish, had a law, unalterable as those of the Medes or Persians, that one had to stand by the results of a toss-up, or a drawing of lots, or any other appeal to chance, however much one might happen to dislike the way things were turning out. I didn't mean to, said Jane, near tears. I don't care. I'll draw another. You know jolly well you can't, said Cyril bitterly. It's settled. It's medium and Persian. You've done it, and we have to stand by it, and us too, worse luck. Never mind. You'll have your pocket money before the 5th. Anyway, we have the jack-in-the-box last, and get the most out of it we can. So the cracker and the Roman candles were lighted, and they were all that could be expected for the money. But when it came to the jack-in-the-box, it simply sat in the tray and laughed at them, as Cyril said. They tried to light it with paper, and they tried to light it with matches. They tried to light it with Vespusian fuses from the pocket of Father's second-best overcoat that was hanging in the hall. And then Anthea slipped away to the cupboard under the stairs where the brooms and dustpans were kept, and the rosiny firelighters that smell so nice and like the woods where pine trees grow, and the old newspapers and the beeswax and turpentine and the horrid and stiff dark rags that are used for cleaning brass and furniture, and the paraffin for the lamps. She came back with a little pot that had once cost 7pence halfpenny, halfpenny even, when it was full of red currant jelly, but the jelly had all been eaten long ago, and now Anthea had filled the jar with paraffin. She came in and she threw the paraffin over the tray just at the moment when Cyril was trying with the 23rd match to light the jack-in-the-box. I'm waiting for just a general, oh my God, coming out of chat. The jack-in-the-box did not catch fire any more than usual, but the paraffin acted quite differently, and in an instant a hot flash of flame leapt up and burned off Cyril's eyelashes, and scorched the faces of all four before they could spring back. They backed in 4 instantaneous bounds as far as they could, which was to the wall, and the pillar of fire reached from floor to ceiling. "My hat!" said Cyril with emotion. "You've done it this time, Anthea." The flame was spreading out under the ceiling like the rose of fire in Mr. Rider Haggard's exciting story about Alan Quatermain. Sorry. Jesus Christ, says Kate B. Quite understandable. There are very few books that basically start with so many bad ideas in a row. They just line them up. This is why you never knew where your mother kept the matches when you were a kid. It's the early 20th century. Kids set themselves on fire all the time. Just kidding. When TV rolled around and the things that the Scarred for Life channels on social media now show, we watched those. We watched the do not play with fireworks, including things like, the guy with his face partially burned off, which may actually have been genuine, explaining why you don't go back to a firework once it's lit. The really horrible one involving a little girl picking up a sparkler after it had gone out. And we also had the don't play with matches, which came in various flavours, including a particularly memorable one involving cartoon insects in the garden and a firefly who couldn't get her light to light, so she'd used a match she found instead and was flying around with that, and that was all fine until her wings burned off, and she was very unwell for quite a long time. You watched a YouTube thing about bonfire night in the 40s and the health and safety violations were impressive. Yeah. When we used to do the fireworks at home when I was a kid, we had things like a plant pot full of damp earth for the sparklers. And the only people, we had kind of a terrace outside the house when I was a kid, and then steps down to the garden, and the only person allowed into the garden down the steps was my dad. Everybody else, we had to stay up on the upper level, so me and my little sister couldn't get too close to the fireworks and stuff. It was taken very seriously. You were not allowed to have sparklers until you were 18. Oh wow, no, I had them when I was about 5. You were the kids with the glow sticks at the 4th of July events. That makes sense. That's quite sensible, to be honest. We were we were doing things like writing in after images on our retinas with the sparklers, who write in the air and you can see the after image. They're great fun, but wildly dangerous if you're an idiot and don't supervise your kids. Not terribly safe if you don't supervise your teenagers, to be fair. They get incredibly hot. So, the room is on fire. I'm assuming, by the way, that people realise who Mr. Rider Haggard is, which is H. Rider Haggard. The Alan Quatermain stories. Kind of a precursor to Indiana Jones. The flame was spreading out under the ceiling like the rose of fire in Mr. Rider Haggard's exciting story about Alan Quatermain. King Solomon's Mines, by the way, is the most well-known of the books. Robert and Cyril saw that no time was to be lost. They turned up the edges of the carpet and kicked them over the tray. This cut off the column of fire, and it disappeared, and there was nothing left but smoke and a dreadful smell of lamps that had been turned too low. Oh. Niccolo and Tilly don't care about fireworks, but Nigel was absolutely terrified, so they're evil and mean devices. Fair enough. Understandable. All hands now rushed to the rescue, and the paraffin fire was only a bundle of trampled carpet, when suddenly a sharp crack beneath their feet made the amateur firemen start back. Another crack. The carpet moved as if it had had a cat wrapped in it. The jack-in-the-box had at last allowed itself to be lighted, and it was going off with desperate violence inside the carpet. You're tangentially familiar with Alan Quatermain. You read A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yep. Yeah, very, very Indiana Jones type character. Robert, with the air of one doing the only possible thing, rushed to the window and opened it. Anthea screamed, Jane burst into tears, and Cyril turned the table wrong way up on top of the carpet heap. But the firework went on, banging and bursting and spluttering even underneath the table. Next moment, Mother rushed in, attracted by the howls of Anthea, and in a few moments the firework desisted, and there was a dead silence, and the children stood looking at each other's black faces and out of the corner of their eyes at their mother's white one. I don't think we're talking race here. I think we're at the concern to be followed by, oh my God, you're in trouble. The fact that the nursery carpet was ruined occasioned but little surprise, nor was anyone really astonished that bed should prove the immediate end of the adventure. Yep, indeed. Everybody's covered in soot except Mother, who is presumably doing that whole hug them to check they're okay and then read them the absolute riot act. May have been on the receiving end of one of them. It has been said that all roads lead to Rome. This may be true, but at any rate in early youth I am quite sure that many roads lead to bed, and stop there, or you do. The rest of the fireworks were confiscated, and Mother was not pleased when Father let them off himself in the back garden, though he said, "Well, how else can you get rid of them, my dear?" You see, Father had forgotten that the children were in disgrace, and that their bedroom windows looked out onto the back garden, so that they all saw the fireworks most beautifully and admired the skill with which Father handled them. Next day, all was forgotten and forgiven, only the nursery had to be deeply cleaned, like spring cleaning, and the ceiling had to be whitewashed. And Mother went out. And just at tea time next day, a man came with a rolled-up carpet, and Father paid him, and Mother said, "If the carpet isn't in good condition, you know I shall expect you to change it." And the man replied, "There ain't a thread gone in it nowhere, Mum. It's a bargain if ever there was one, and I'm more than half sorry I let it go at the price, but we can't resist the ladies, can we, sir?" And he winked at Father and went away. Then the carpet was put down in the nursery, and sure enough, there wasn't a hole in it anywhere. As the last fold was unrolled, something hard and loud-sounding bumped out of it and trundled along the nursery floor. All the children scrambled for it, and Cyril got it. He took it to the gas. These children should not be let loose near fire. It was shaped like an egg, very yellow and shiny, half transparent, and it had an odd sort of light in it that changed as you held it in different ways. It was as though it was an egg with a yolk of pale fire that just showed through the stone. "I may keep it, mayn't I, Mother?" Cyril asked. And of course Mother said no, they must take it back to the man who had bought the carpet, because she had only paid for a carpet and not for a stone egg with a fiery yolk to it. So she told them where the shop was, and it was in the Kentish Town Road, not far from the hotel that is called the Bull and Gate. It was a poky little shop, and the man was arranging furniture outside on the pavement very cunningly, so that the more broken parts should show as little as possible. And directly he saw the children he knew them again, and began at once without giving them chance to speak. "No, you don't," he cried loudly. "I ain't going to be taking back no carpet, so don't you make no bloomin' error. A bargain's a bargain, and the carpet's perfect throughout." "We don't want you to take it back," said Cyril. "We've found something in it." "It must have got into it up at your place, then," said the man with indignant promptness. "For there ain't nothing in it as long nothing I sell. It's all as clean as a whistle." "I never said it wasn't clean," said Cyril, "but—" "Oh, if it's moths," said the man, "that's easily cured with borax. But I expect it was only an odd one. I tell you the carpet's good through and through. It hadn't got no moths where it left my hands, not so much as a egg." "But that's just it," interrupted Jane. "There was so much as an egg." The man made a sort of rush at the children and stamped his foot. "Clear out, I say," he shouted, "or I'll call for the police. A nice thing for customers to wear you coming around here charging me with finding things in goods what I sells. Here, be off before I send you off with a flea in your ear. Oi, constable." "Okay. I just got accosted by a moth while I was reading that last line." That was disconcerting. As much of a technological advance as gaslights and heat was, it was also stupid and dangerous, and you're glad we use electricity now, which is dangerous, but differently dangerous, yeah. You kind of have to put an effort into getting injured by electricity. At least on the AC current. Sorry. So, perhaps if the gentleman had actually listened and not assumed he was being accosted, this whole book would have been very, very short. The children fled, and they think, and their father thinks, that they couldn't have done anything else. Mother has her own opinion, but father said they might keep the egg. "The man certainly didn't know the egg was there when he bought the carpet," said he, "any more than your mother did, and we've as much right to it as he had." So the egg was put on the mantelpiece, where it quite brightened up the dingy nursery. The nursery was dingy because it was a basement room, and its windows looked out onto a stone area, with a rockery made of clinkers facing the windows. Nothing grew in the rockery except London pride and snails. The room had been described in the house agent's list as a convenient breakfast room in basement, and in the daytime it was rather dark. This did not matter so much in the evenings when the gas was alight, but then it was in the evening that the black beetles got so sociable and used to come out of the low cupboards on each side of the fireplace where their homes were and try to make friends with the children. At least I suppose that was what they wanted, but the children never would. On the 5th of November, father and mother went to the theatre, and the children were not happy because the Prosses next door had lots of fireworks and they had none. They were not even allowed to have a bonfire in the garden. "No more playing with fire, thank you," was father's answer when they asked him. When the baby had been put to bed, the children sat sadly around the fire in the nursery. "I'm beastly bored," said Robert. "Let's talk about the Psammead," said Anthea, who generally tried to give the conversation a cheerful turn. "What's the good of talking?" said Cyril. "What I want is for something to happen. It's awfully stuffy for a chap not to be allowed out in the evenings. There's simply nothing to do when you've gotten through your homers." Jane finished the last of her home lessons and shut the book with a bang. "We've got the pleasure of memory," said she. "Just think of last holidays." Last holidays, indeed, offered something to think of, for they had been spent in the country at a white house between a sand-pit and a gravel-pit, and things had happened. The children had found a Psammead, or sand fairy, and it had let them have anything they wished for, just exactly anything, with no bother about it not being really for their good, or anything like that. And if you want to know what kind of things they wished for, and how their wishes turned out, you can read it all in the book called 5 Children in It. It was the Psammead. It was the Psammead. If you've not read it, perhaps I ought to tell you that the 5th child was the baby brother, who was called the Lamb, because the first thing he ever said was "Bah," and the other children who were not particularly handsome, nor were they extra clever, nor extraordinarily good. But they were not bad sorts on the whole. In fact, they were rather like you. I don't want to think about the pleasures of memory, said Cyril. I want some more things to happen. We're very much luckier than anyone else as it is, said Jane. Why, no one else ever found a Psammead. We ought to be grateful. Why couldn't we go on being, though? Cyril asked. Lucky, I mean, not grateful. Why has it all got to stop? Perhaps something will happen, said Anthea comfortably. Do you know, sometimes I think we're the sort of people that things do happen to. Yes, because you keep setting fire to your house. Sorry. It's like that in history, said Jane. Some kings are full of interesting things, and others, nothing ever happens to them. Except that they're being born and crowned and buried, and sometimes not that. You also said bar was your first word. Your mother goes by Beth, which was what your dad called her, though they all interpreted to mean ball. Oh, bless. Either way, well, fair play. I have no idea what mine was. Might have to ask my mum if she remembers. It was probably no, knowing me. I think Panther's right, said Cyril. I think we're the sort of people things do happen to. They refer to Anthea as Panther, by the way. I have a sort of feeling that things would happen right enough if we could only give them a shove. They just want something to start it, that's all. I wish they taught magic at school, Jane sighed. I believe if we could do a little magic, it might make something happen. I wonder how you begin. Robert looked around the room, but he got no ideas from the faded green carpets or the drab Venetian blinds, or the worn brown oilcloth on the floor. Even the new carpet suggested nothing, though its pattern was a very wonderful one, and always seemed as though it were just going to make you think of something. Perks of being the firstborn, people had time and energy to fill out your baby book. Oh, fair enough. I could begin right enough, said Anthea. I've read lots about it, but I believe it's wrong in the Bible. It's only wrong in the Bible because people wanted to hurt other people. I don't see how things can be wrong unless they hurt somebody, and we don't want to hurt anybody, and what's more, we jolly well couldn't if we tried. Let's get the Ingoldsby legends. There's a thing about abracadabra there, said Cyril, yawning. We might as well play at magic. Let's be Knights Templars. They were awfully gone on magic. They used to work spells or something with a goat and a goose. Father says so. That's all right, said Robert unkindly. You can play the goat right enough, and Jane knows how to be a goose. I'll get Ingoldsby, said Anthea hastily. You turn up the hearthrug. These kids would not survive half a session of Call of Cthulhu run by me. I'm sorry, I'm just going to come out and say it. They really are absolutely their own worst enemies. Sorry. So they traced strange figures on the linoleum where the hearthrug had kept it clean. They traced them with chalk that Robert had nicked from the top of the mathematical master's desk at school. You know, of course, that it is stealing to take a new stick of chalk, but it's not wrong to take a broken piece so long as you only take one. I do not know the reason of this rule, nor who made it. And they chanted all the gloomiest songs they could think of. And, of course, nothing happened. So then Anthea said, I'm sure a magic fire ought to be made of sweet-smelling wood, and have magic gums and essences and things in it. I don't know of any sweet-smelling wood except cedar, said Robert, but I've got some ends of cedar wood lead pencil. So they burned the ends of lead pencil, and still nothing happened. Let's burn some of the eucalyptus oil we have for our colds, said Anthea. Stop burning things, kids. I know, let's set it on fire. That is their first solution to everything, is let's burn it. I had not realised. I've seen an adaptation of this. I swear to God, they didn't set fire to half as much on TV. I can only imagine the warnings probably have had to go out after the watershed. And they did. It certainly smelt very strong, and they burned lumps of camphor out of the big chest. It was very bright and made a horrid black smoke which looked very magical. Fire is their only solution. Yes. But still nothing happened. Then they got some clean tea cloths from the dresser drawer in the kitchen and waved them over the magic chalk drawings and sang the hymn of the Moravian nuns at Bethlehem, which is very impressive. And still nothing happened. By and large, it's an effective solution. Yeah. So they waved more and more wildly, and Robert's tea cloth caught the golden egg and whisked it off the mantelpiece, and it fell into the fender and rolled under the grate. "Oh, crikey," said more than one voice. And everyone instantly fell down flat on its front to look under the grate, and there lay the egg, glowing in a nest of hot ashes. "It's not smashed anyhow," said Robert, and he put his hand under the grate and picked up the egg. But the egg was much hotter than anyone would have believed it could possibly get in such a short time, and Robert had to drop it with a cry of "Bother!" It fell on the top bar of the grate, and bounced right into the glowing red-hot heart of the fire. Like Jason in The Good Place said, you have a problem, you throw a Molotov cocktail at it, and boom, you have a completely different problem. Yep. That sentiment's been around for quite a while. "The tongs!" cried Anthea, but alas, no one could remember where they were. Everyone had forgotten that the tongs had last been used to fish up the doll's teapot from the bottom of the water butt where the lamb had dropped it. So the nursery tongs were resting between the water butt and the dustbin, and Cook refused to lend the kitchen ones. I think this is why the parents went out. They wanted to get away from the fires and the drink. I love these kids, but oh, good Lord. I think this is why they've had 5 kids, because they're fairly sure they're not all making it to adulthood. I think the parents are playing the odds. "Never mind," said Robert. "We'll get it out with the poker and the shovel." This is why laudanum was legal too, yeah. "Oh, stop," cried Anthea. "Look at it. Look, look, look. I do believe something is going to happen." For the egg was now red hot, and inside it something was moving. My children are pyromaniacs. I need alcohol, but out of their reach. Yeah. Next moment there was a soft cracking sound. The egg burst in two, and out of it came a flame-coloured bird. It rested a moment among the flames, and as it rested there, the 4 children could see it growing bigger and bigger under their eyes. Every mouth was agape, every eye agoggle. The bird rose in its nest of fire, stretched its wings, and flew out into the room. It flew round and round and round again, and where it passed the air was warm. Oh, it was only a matter of time before they invent nursery flambé. Yes. Then it perched on the fender. The children looked at each other. Then Cyril put out a hand towards the bird. It put its head on one side and looked up at him, as you may have seen a parrot do just when it's going to speak, so that the children were hardly astonished at all when it said, "Be careful, I'm not nearly cool yet." They were not astonished, but they were very, very much interested. This is the only family that can hatch a phoenix. No one else would have half as much fire around. Yeah. They looked at the bird, and it was certainly worth looking at it. Its feathers were like gold. They were about as large as a bantam, only its beak was not at all bantam-shaped. "I believe I know what it is," said Robert. "I've seen a picture." He hurried away. A hasty dash and scramble among the papers on Father's study table yielded, as the sum books say, the desired result. But when he came back into the room, holding out a paper and crying, "I say, look here," the others all said, "Hush!" and he hushed obediently and instantly, for the bird was speaking. "Which of you," it was saying, "put the egg into the fire?" "He did," said 3 voices, and 3 fingers pointed at Robert. The bird bowed. At least it was more like that than anything else. "I am your grateful debtor," it said with a high-bred air. The children were all choking with wonder and curiosity, all except Robert. He held the paper in his hand, and he knew. He said so. He said, "I know who you are." And he opened and displayed a printed paper, at the head of which was a little picture of a bird sitting in a nest of flames. "You're the phoenix," said Robert, and the bird was quite pleased. "My fame has lived then for 2,000 years, it said. "Allow me to look at my portrait." It looked at the page which Robert, kneeling down, spread out in the fender, and said, "It is not a flattering likeness. And what are these characters?" it asked, pointing to the printed part. "Oh, that's dullish. It's not much about you, you know," said Cyril with unconscious politeness. "But you're in lots of books." "Which portraits? With portraits?" asked the phoenix. "Well, no. In fact," said Cyril, "I don't think I ever saw a portrait of you but that one, but I can read you something about yourself if you'd like." The phoenix nodded, and Cyril went off and fetched volume 10 of the old encyclopedia, and on page 246 he found the following. "Phoenix, in ornithology, a fabulous bird of antiquity." "Antiquity is quite correct," said the phoenix. "But fabulous. Well, do I look it?" Everyone shook its head. Cyril went on. "The ancients speak of this bird as single or the only one of its kind." "Well, that's right enough," said the phoenix. "They describe it as the size of an eagle." "Eagles are of different sizes," said the phoenix. "It's not at all a good description." All the children were kneeling on the hearthrug to be as near the phoenix as possible. "You'll boil your brains," it said. "Look out, I'm nearly cool now." And with a whir of golden wings it fluttered from the fender to the table. It was so nearly cool there was only a very faint smell of burning when it settled itself on the tablecloth. "It's only very little scorched," said the phoenix apologetically. "It will come out in the wash. Please, go on reading." "The size of an eagle," Cyril went on. "Its head finely crested with a beautiful plumage, its neck covered with feathers of a golden colour, and the rest of its body purple, only the tail white and the eyes sparkling like stars. They say that it lives about 500 years in the wilderness, and when advanced in age it builds itself a pile of sweet wood and aromatic gums, fires it with the wafting of its wings, and thus burns itself, and that from the ashes arises a worm, which in time grows up to be a phoenix. Hence the Phoenicians gave—" "Never mind what they gave," said the phoenix, ruffling its golden feathers. "They never gave much anyway. There always were people who gave them nothing and were for nothing. That book ought to be destroyed. It's most inaccurate. The rest of my body was never purple, and as my tail, well, I simply ask you, is it white?" He turned around and gravely presented its golden tail to the children. "No, it's not," said everybody. You love the idea of a slightly anxious newborn phoenix. "No, and never was," said the phoenix. "And that about the worm is just a vulgar insult. The phoenix has an egg, like all respectable birds. It makes a pile, that part's all right. And it lays its egg, and it burns itself, and it goes to sleep and wakes up in its egg, and comes out and goes on living again, and so on forever and ever. I can't tell you how weary I got of it. Such a restless existence, no repose." "But how did your egg get here?" asked Anthea. "No, that's my life secret," said the phoenix. "I couldn't tell it to anyone who wasn't really sympathetic. I've always been a misunderstood bird. You can tell that by what they say about the worm. I might tell you," it went on, looking at Robert with eyes that were indeed starry. "You put me on the fire." Robert looked uncomfortable. "The rest of us made the fire with sweet-scented woods and gums, though," said Cyril. "And it was an accident, my putting you on the fire," said Robert, telling the truth with some difficulty, for he did not know how the phoenix might take it. It took it in the most unexpected manner. "Your candid avowal," it said, "removes my last scruple. I will tell you my story." "And you won't vanish or do anything sudden, will you?" asked Anthea anxiously. "Why?" it asked, puffing out the golden feathers. "Do you wish me to stay here?" "Oh, yes," said everyone, with unmistakable sincerity. "Why?" asked the phoenix again, looking modestly at the tablecloth. "Because," said everyone at once, and then stopped short. Only Jane added after a pause, "You're the most beautiful person we've ever seen." "You're a sensible child," said the phoenix, and I will not vanish or anything sudden, and I will tell you my tale. I had resided, as your book says, for many thousand years in the wilderness, which is a large, quiet place with very little really good society, and I was becoming weary of the monotony of my existence. But I acquired the habit of laying my egg and burning myself every 500 years, and you know how difficult it is to break yourself of a habit. Yes, said Cyril, Jane used to bite her nails. But I broke myself of it, urged Jane, rather hurt. You know I did. Not till they put bitter aloes on them, said Cyril. I doubt, said the bird gravely, whether even bitter aloes, the aloe, by the way, has a bad habit of its own, which might well cure before seeking to cure others. I allude to its indolent practice of flowering but once a century. I doubt whether even bitter aloes could have cured me, but I was cured. I awoke one morning from a feverish dream. It was getting near the time for me to lay that tiresome fire, and lay that tedious egg upon it, and I saw two people, a man and a woman. They were sitting on a carpet, and when I accosted them civilly, they narrated to me their life story, which, as you have not yet heard it, I will now proceed to relate. They were a prince and princess, and the story of their parents was one which I am sure you will like to hear. In early youth, the mother of the princess happened to hear the story of a certain enchanter, and in that story I am sure you'll be interested. The enchanter— Oh, please don't, said Anthea. I can't understand all these beginnings of stories, and you seem to be getting deeper and deeper in them every minute. Do tell us your own story, that's what we really want to hear. Aloes may be indolent with regard to flowering, but yours at least are extremely ambitious when it comes to taking over your entire flat. I managed to kill mine. I have so far killed 2 of them. I cannot sort out the watering and the climate, because I have to have them as houseplants, and yeah, I don't think they like Psammead. I feel I do not have sufficient light. Well, said the Phoenix, seeming on the whole rather flattered. To cut about 70 long stories short, though I had to listen to them all, but to be sure in the wilderness there is plenty of time. This prince and princess were so fond of each other that they did not want anyone else, and the enchanter, don't be alarmed, I won't go into his history, had given them a magic carpet. You've heard of a magic carpet. And they just sat on it and told it to take them right away from everyone, and it brought them to the wilderness. And as they meant to stay there, they had no further use for the carpet, so they gave it to me. That was indeed the chance of a lifetime. 1 4-inch aloe bought over a decade ago, and it has put 10 offspring in 10 to 12-inch pots and trying to escape them. Oh, colour me jealous. Seriously. What do you do with them? I mean, how? Good Lord. I want details of the watering and the light schedule, and I want it in my channel on the Discord now. Well, not now, when you've got time, if you feel like it. I don't see what you wanted with a carpet, said Jane, when you've got those lovely wings. Benign neglect. I've tried that. That killed one. They are nice wings, aren't they? Said the Phoenix, simpering and spreading them out. Well, I got the prince to lay out the carpet, and I laid my egg on it. Then I said to the carpet, Now, my excellent carpet, prove your worth. Take that egg somewhere where it can't be hatched for 2,000 years, and where, when that time's up, someone will light a fire of sweet wood and aromatic gums and put the egg in to hatch. And you see, it's all come out exactly as I said. The words were no sooner out of my beak than egg and carpet disappeared. The royal lovers assisted to arrange my pile and soothed my last moments. I burned myself up, and knew no more till I awoke on yonder altar. It pointed its claw at the grate. But the carpet, said Robert, the magic carpet that takes you anywhere you wish, what became of that? Oh, that, said the Phoenix carelessly. I should say that is the carpet. I remember the pattern perfectly. It pointed, as it spoke, to the floor, where lay the carpet which Mother had bought in the Kentish Town Road for 22 shillings and 9pence. At that instant, Father's latchkey was heard in the door. "Oh," whispered Cyril. "Now we shall catch it for not being in bed." "Wish yourself there," said the Phoenix in a hurried whisper, "and then wish the carpet back in its place." No sooner said than done. It made one a little giddy, certainly, and a little breathless. But when things were right way up again, there the children were, in bed, and the lights were out. They heard the soft voice of the Phoenix through the darkness. "I shall sleep on the cornice above your curtains," it said. "Please don't mention me to your kinsfolk." "Not much good," said Robert. "They'd never believe us. I say," he called through the half-open door to the girls, "talk about adventures and things happening. We ought to be able to get some fun out of a magic carpet and a phoenix." "Rather," said the girls in bed. "Children," said Father on the stairs, "go to sleep at once. What do you mean by talking at this time of night?" No answer was expected to this question, but under the bedclothes Cyril murmured one. "Mean?" he said. "Don't know what we mean. I don't know what anything means." "But we've got a magic carpet and a phoenix," said Robert. "You'll get something else if Father comes in and catches you," said Cyril. "Shut up, I tell you." Robert shut up, but he knew as well as you do that the adventures of that carpet and that phoenix were only just beginning. Father and Mother had not the least idea of what had happened in their absence. This is often the case, even when there are no magic carpets or phoenixes in the house. The next morning... but I'm sure you would rather wait till the next chapter before you hear about that. What do you think to chapter 1? Pardon me. A drink break. Would you like chapter 2, since I'm not streaming tonight, since I'm not game streaming tonight, rather? I do apologise if the kids aren't distinct enough in their voices. I'm trying very hard. You keep thinking of them as the anti-Pevensies. Very much. I always felt that the Pevensies were... they were walking parables. They were either nice or they were naughty, and if they were naughty, they could be punished appropriately in the story. But they never really felt like children. They felt like small grown-ups. The kids from Five Children and It and the Phoenix and the Carpet always feel like themselves. They feel like children. They don't necessarily feel like the idealised children. They kind of feel like real children. It's got a unique voice, not like a lot of kids lit, and you can keep going if you feel up to it. Hey. Okay, well, I am... yeah, Hiram, I'm okay as long as I don't actually move. But yeah, I'm definitely not up to playing the game tonight. So, give me a mo. I will have another swig of drink. Decaf, I hate you. And move on to chapter 2. Ahem, ahem, ahem. My theory of the Brontosaur. Give me a sec. I just realised I didn't set Audacity recording, which I was going to do. Right, okay. Speaking of growing up like children, you listened to a review of Methods of Rationality and it was scathing. I don't know that. Not a book I'm familiar with. Chapter 2. The Topless Tower. The children had seen the phoenix egg hatched in the flames in their own nursery grate, and had heard from it how the carpet on their own nursery floor was really the wishing carpet, which would take them anywhere they chose. The carpet had transported them to bed just at the right moment. and the phoenix had gone to roost on the cornice supporting the window curtains of the boy's room. "Excuse me," said a gentle voice, and a courteous beak opened very kindly and delicately the right eye of Cyril. "I hear the slaves below preparing food. Awaken! A word of explanation and arrangement. I do wish you wouldn't." The phoenix stopped speaking and fluttered away crossly to the cornice pole, for Cyril had hit out, as boys do when they're awakened suddenly, and the phoenix was not used to boys, and his feelings, if not his wings, were hurt. It's a Harry Potter fanfic that's a recruiting tool for the cult of rationality. Ah, okay. Fair enough. "Sorry," said Cyril, coming awake all in a minute. "Do come back. What was it you were saying? Something about bacon and rations?" The phoenix fluttered back to the brass rail at the foot of the bed. You put your beak in his eye. No wonder he was surprised. "I say, you are real," said Cyril. "How ripping! And the carpet?" "The carpet is as real as it ever was," said the phoenix rather contemptuously. "But of course a carpet's only a carpet, whereas a phoenix is superlatively a phoenix." "Yes, indeed," said Cyril. "I see it is. Oh, what luck. Wake up, Bobs. There's jolly well something to wake up for today, and it's Saturday too." "I've been reflecting," said the phoenix, "during the silent watches of the night, and I could not avoid the conclusion that you were quite insufficiently astonished at my appearance yesterday. The ancients were always very surprised. Did you, by chance, expect my egg to hatch?" "Not us," Cyril said. "And if we had," said Anthea, who had come in her nightie when she heard the silvery voice of the phoenix, "we had never have expected to hatch into anything so splendid as you." The bird smiled. Perhaps you've never seen a bird smile. "You see," said Anthea, wrapping herself in the boy's counterpane, for the morning was chill, "we've had things happen to us before," and she told the story of the Psammead, or sand fairy. "Oh, yes," said the phoenix. "Psammeads were rare even in my time. I remember I used to be called the Psammead of the desert. I was always having compliments paid me. I can't think why." "Can you give wishes, then?" asked Jane, who had now come in too. "Oh, dear me, no," said the phoenix contemptuously. "At least, but I hear footsteps approaching. I hasten to conceal myself." And it did. Ow, sorry. Ahem. I think I said that this day was a Saturday. It was also Cook's birthday, and Mother had allowed her and Eliza to go to the Crystal Palace with a party of friends. So Jane and Anthea, of course, had to help make the beds and wash up the breakfast cups and little things like that. Yes. Robert and Cyril intended to spend the morning in conversation with the phoenix, but the bird had its own ideas about this. Yes, because they're boys and they don't have to do the washing up. "I must have an hour or two's quiet," it said. "I really must. My nerves will give way unless I can get a little rest. You must remember it's 2,000 years since I had any conversation. I'm out of practice, and I must take care of myself. I've often been told that mine is a valuable life." So I nestled down inside an old hat box of Father's, which had been brought down from the box room some days before, when a helmet was suddenly needed for a game of tournaments, with its golden head under its golden wing, and went to sleep. So then Robert and Cyril moved the table back, and were going to sit on the carpet and wish themselves somewhere else, but before they could decide on the place, Cyril said, "I don't know, perhaps it's rather sneakish to begin without the girls." "They'll be all morning," said Robert impatiently. And then a thing inside him, which tiresome books sometimes call the inward monitor, said, "Why don't you help them, then?" Oh, good, voice of the reader. Cyril's inward monitor happened to say the same thing at the same moment, so the boys went and helped to wash up the teacups and to dust the drawing room. Robert was so interested that he proposed to clean the front doorsteps, a thing he had never been allowed to do. Nor was he allowed to do it on this occasion. One reason was that it had already been done by Cook. When all the housework was finished, the girls dressed the happy, wriggling baby in his blue highwayman coat and three-cornered hat and kept him amused while Mother changed her dress and got ready to take him over to Granny's. Mother always went to Granny's every Saturday, and generally some of the children went with her, but today they were told they were to keep house. And their hearts were full of joyous and delightful feelings every time they remembered that the house they would have to keep had a phoenix in it, and a wishing carpet. You can always keep the lamb good and happy for quite a long time if you play the Noah's Ark game with him. It's quite simple. He just sits on your lap and tells you what animal he is, and then you say the little poetry piece about whatever animal he chooses to be. Of course, some of the animals, like the zebra and the tiger, haven't got any poetry because they're difficult to rhyme to. The lamb knows quite well which are the poetry animals. "I'm a baby bear," said the lamb, snugging down, and Anthea began. "I love my little baby bear, I love his nose and toes and hair. I like to hold him in my arm and keep him very safe and warm." And when she said very, of course, there was a real bear's hug. Then came the eel, and the lamb was tickled till he wriggled exactly like a real one. "I love my little baby eel, he's so squidgety to feel. He'll be an eel when he is big, but now he's just a tiny snig." Perhaps you didn't know that a snig was a baby eel. It is, though, and the lamb knew it. "Hedgehog now," he said, and Anthea went on. "My baby hedgehog, how I like ye, though your back's so prickly spiky. Your front is very soft, I found, so I must love you front ways round." And then she loved him front ways round, while he squealed with pleasure. It's a very baby game, and of course the rhymes are only meant for very, very small people. Not for people who are old enough to read books, so I won't tell you any more of them. By the time the lamb had been a baby lion, and a baby weasel, and a baby rabbit, and a baby rat, Mother was ready, and she and the lamb, having been kissed by everybody and hugged as thoroughly as it is possible to be when you're dressed for out of doors, were seen to the tram by the boys. When the boys came back, everyone looked at everyone else and said, "Now!" They unlocked the front door, and they locked the back door, and they fastened all the windows. They moved the table and the chairs off the carpet, and Anthea swept it. "We must show it a little attention," she said kindly. "We'll give it tea leaves next time. Carpets like tea leaves." Then everyone put on its outdoor things because, as Cyril said, they didn't know where they might be going, and it makes people stare if you go out of doors in November in pinafores and without hats. Then Robert gently awoke the phoenix, who yawned and stretched itself, and allowed Robert to lift it onto the middle of the carpet, where it instantly went to sleep again, with its crested head tucked under its golden wing as before. Then everyone sat down on the carpet. "Where shall we go?" was of course the question, and it was warmly discussed. Anthea wanted to go to Japan, Robert and Cyril voted for America, and Jane wished to go to the seaside. "Because there are donkeys there," said she. "Not in November, silly," said Cyril, and the discussion got warmer and warmer, and still nothing was settled. "I vote we let the phoenix decide," said Robert at last. So they stroked it till it woke. "We want to go somewhere abroad," they said, "and we can't make up our minds where." "Let the carpet make up its mind, if it has one," said the phoenix. "Just say you wish to go abroad." It's a lot of seaside as well. So they did, and the next moment the world seemed to spin upside down, and when it was right way up again, and they were ungiddy enough to look about them, they were out of doors. Out of doors. This is a feeble way to express where they were. They were out of the earth, or off it. In fact, they were floating steadily, safely, splendidly, in the crisp, clear air, with the pale blue sky, bright blue sky of the above them. Bright blue of the sky above them, and far down below the pale, bright, sun-diamonded waves of the sea. The carpet had stiffened itself somehow, so that it was firm and square and firm like a raft, and it steered itself so beautifully and kept on its way so flat and fearless that no one was at all afraid of tumbling off. In front of them lay land. "The coast of France," said the phoenix, waking up and pointing with its wing. "Where do you wish to go? I should always keep one wish, of course, for emergencies, otherwise you may get into an emergency from which you can't emerge at all. but the children were far too deeply interested to listen. "I tell you what," said Cyril, "let's let the thing go on, and when we see a place we really want to stop at, why, we'll just stop. Isn't this ripping?" "It's like trains," said Anthea, as they swept over the low-lying coastline and held a steady course over orderly fields and straight roads bordered with poplar trees. "Like express trains, only in trains you can never see anything because of grown-ups wanting the windows shut, and then they breathe on them and it's like ground glass and nobody can see anything, and then they go to sleep." "It's like tobogganing," said Robert, "so fast and smooth, only there's no doormat to stop short on, and it just goes on and on." "Oh, you darling Phoenix," said Jane, "it's all you're doing. Oh, look at that ducky little church and the women with flappy-cappy things on their heads." "Don't mention it," said the Phoenix with sleepy politeness. "Oh," said Cyril, summing up all the rapture that was in every heart. "Look at it all. Look at it, and think of the Kentish Town Road." Everyone looked at it, and everyone thought. And the glorious, gliding, smooth, steady rush went on, and they looked down on strange and beautiful things, and held their breath and let it go in deep sighs, and said "oh" and "ah" till it was long past dinner time. It was Jane who suddenly said, "I wish we'd brought that jam tart and cold mutton with us. It would have been jolly to have a picnic in the air." The jam tart and cold mutton were, however, far away, sitting quietly in the larder of the house in Camden Town, which the children were supposed to be keeping. A mouse was, at that moment, tasting the outside of the raspberry jam part of the tart. She had nibbled a sort of gulf or bay through the sharp pastry edge, to see whether it was the sort of dinner she could ask her little mouse husband to sit down to. She had had a very good dinner herself. It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. "We'll stop as soon as we see a nice place," said Anthea. "I've got threepence, and you boys have the fourpence each your trams didn't cost the other day, so we can buy things to eat. I expect the Phoenix can speak French." Yeah, you've not got the whole hang of different currencies, have you, dear? The carpet was sailing along rocks and rivers and trees and towns and farms and fields. It reminded everybody of a certain time when all of them had wings, and had flown up to the top of a church tower, and had had a feast there of chicken and tongue, and new bread and soda water. And this again reminded them of how hungry they were. And just as they were all being reminded of this very strongly indeed, they saw ahead of them some ruined walls on a hill, and strong and upright, and really, to look at, as good as new, a great square tower. "The top of that's just exactly the same size as the carpet," said Jane. "I think it would be good to get to the top of that, because then none of the Abbey What's-its-names, I mean natives, would be able to take the carpet away even if they wanted to. And then some of us could go out and get things to eat. Buy them honestly, I mean, not take them out of larder windows." "I think it would be better if we went—" Anthea was beginning, but Jane suddenly clenched her hands. "I don't see why I should never do anything I want, just because I'm the youngest. I wish the carpet would fit itself in at the top of that tower, so there." The carpet made a disconcerting bound, and the next moment it was hovering above the square top of the tower. Then slowly and carefully it began to sink under them. It was like a lift going down with you at the Army and Navy stores. "I don't think we ought to wish for things without all agreeing to them first," said Robert huffishly. "Hello, what on earth?" For unexpectedly and greyly something was coming up all around the four sides of the carpet. It was as if a wall were being built by magic quickness. It was a foot high. It was 2 feet high. 3, 4, 5. It was shutting out the light more and more. Anthea looked at the sky and the walls that now rose 6 feet above them. "We're dropping into the tower," she screamed. "There wasn't any top to it, so the carpet's going to fit itself in at the bottom." Robert sprang to his feet. "We ought to have, an owl's nest." He put his knee on a jutting smooth piece of grey stone and reached his hand into a deep window slit, broad to the inside of the tower and narrowing like a funnel to the outside. "Look sharp!" cried everyone. But Robert did not look sharp enough. By the time he had drawn his hand out of the owl's nest, there were no net eggs there, the carpet had sunk 8 feet below him. "Jump, you silly cuckoo!" cried Cyril with brotherly anxiety. But Robert couldn't turn all round in a minute into a jumping position. He wriggled and twisted and got onto the broad ledge, and by the time he was ready to jump the walls, by the time he was ready to jump, the walls of the tower had risen up 30 feet above the others, who were still sinking with the carpet, and Robert found himself in the embrasure of a window, alone, for even the owls were not at home that day. The wall was smoothish, and there was no climbing up, and as for climbing down, Robert hid his face in his hands and squirmed back and back from the giddy verge, until the back part of him was wedged quite tight in the narrowest part of the window slit. He was safe now, of course, but the outside part of his window was like a frame to a picture of part of the other side of the tower. It was very pretty, with moss growing between the stones and little shiny gems, but between him and it there was the width of the tower, and nothing in it but empty air. The situation was terrible. Robert saw in a flash that the carpet was likely to bring them into just the same sort of tight places that they used to get into with the wishes the Psammead granted them. And the others, imagine their feelings as the carpet sank slowly and steadily to the very bottom of the tower, leaving Robert clinging to the wall. Robert did not even try to imagine their feelings. He had quite enough to do with his own, but you can. As soon as the carpet came to a stop on the ground at the bottom of the inside of the tower, it suddenly lost that raft-like stiffness which had been such a comfort during this journey from Camden Town to the topless tower, and spread itself limply over the loose stones and little earthy mounds at the bottom of the tower, just exactly like any ordinary carpet. Also it shrank suddenly, so that it seemed to draw away from under their feet, and they stepped quickly off the edges and stood on the firm ground, while the carpet drew itself in until it was its proper size, and no longer fitted exactly inside the inside of the tower, but left quite a big space around it. Then across the carpet they looked at each other, and then every chin was tilted up, and every eye sought vainly to see where poor Robert had got to. And of course they couldn't see him. "I wish we hadn't come," said Jane. "You always do," said Cyril briefly. "Look here, we can't leave Robert up there. I wish the carpet would fetch him down." The carpet seemed to awake from a dream and pull itself together. It stiffened itself briskly and floated up between the four walls of the tower. The children below craned their heads back and nearly broke their necks in doing so. The carpet rose and rose. It hung poised darkly above them for an anxious moment or two, and then it dropped down again, threw itself on the uneven floor of the tower, and as it did so it tumbled Robert out on the uneven floor of the tower. "Oh, glory," said Robert, "that was quite a squeak. You don't know how I felt. I say, I've had about enough for a bit. Let's wish ourselves at home again and have a go at that jam tart and mutton. We can go out again afterwards." "Righto," said everyone, for the adventure had shaken the nerves of all. So they all got onto the carpet again and said, "I wish we were at home." And lo and behold, they were no more at home than before. The carpet never moved. The phoenix had taken the opportunity to go to sleep. Anthea woke it up gently. "Look here," she said. "I'm looking," said the phoenix. "We wish to be at home, and we're still here," complained Jane. "No," said the phoenix, looking about it at the high, dark walls of the tower. "No, I quite see that." "But we wish to be at home," said Cyril. "No doubt," said the bird politely. "And the carpet hasn't moved an inch," said Robert. "No," said the phoenix, "I see it hasn't." "But I thought it was a wishing carpet." "So it is," said the phoenix. "Then why?" asked the children all together. "I did tell you, you know," said the phoenix, "only you're so fond of listening to the music of your own voices. It is indeed the most lovely music to each of us, and therefore—" "You did tell us what?" interrupted and exasperated. "Why, that the carpet only gives you 3 wishes a day, and you've had them." There was a heartfelt silence. "Then how are we going to get home?" said Cyril at last. "I haven't any idea," replied the phoenix kindly. "Can I fly out and get you any little thing?" "How would you carry the money to pay for it?" "It isn't necessary. Birds always take what they want. It's not regarded as stealing, except in the case of magpies." The children were glad to find they had been right in supposing this to be the case on the day when they had wings and had enjoyed someone else's ripe plums. As the bishop said to the actress. Yes, let the phoenix get us something to eat anyway, Robert urged. If it will be so kind, you mean, corrected Anthea in a whisper. If it will be so kind, and we can be thinking while it's gone. So the phoenix fluttered up through the grey space of the tower and vanished at the top. And it was not until it had quite gone that Jane said, Suppose it never comes back? It was not a pleasant thought, and though Anthea once said, Of course it will come back, I'm certain it's a bird of its word, a further gloom was cast by the idea. For, curiously enough, there was no door to the tower, and all the windows were far, far too high to be reached by the most adventurous climber. It was cold, too, and Anthea shivered. Yes, said Cyril, it's like being at the bottom of a well. The children waited in a sad and hungry silence and got little stiff necks while holding their little heads back to look up at the inside of the tall grey tower to see if the phoenix were coming. At last it came. It looked very big as it fluttered down between the walls, and as it neared them the children saw that its bigness was caused by a basket of boiled chestnuts, which it carried in one claw. In the other it held a piece of bread, and in its beak was a very large pear. The pear was juicy and as quite as good as a very small drink. When the meal was over, everyone felt better, and the question of how to get home was discussed without any disagreeableness. But no one could think of any way out of the difficulty, or even out of the tower. For the phoenix, though its beak and claws had fortunately been strong enough to carry food for them, was plainly not equal to flying through the air with 4 well-nourished children. We must stay here, I suppose, said Robert at last, and shout out every now and then, and someone will hear us and bring ropes and ladders and rescue us like out of the mines, and will get up a subscription to send us home like castaways. Yes, but we shan't be home before Mother is, and then Father will take away the carpet and say it's dangerous or something, said Cyril. I do wish we hadn't come, said Jane, and everyone else said, Shut up, except Anthea, who suddenly awoke the phoenix and said, Look here, I believe you can help us. Oh, I do wish you would. I will help you as far as lies in my power, said the phoenix at once. What is it you want now? When we want to get home, said everyone. Oh, said the phoenix. Yes, home, you said. Meaning? Where we live, where we slept last night, where the altar is that your egg was hatched on. Oh, there, said the phoenix. Well, I'll do my best. It fluttered onto the carpet and walked up and down for a few minutes in deep thought. Then it drew itself up proudly. I can help you, it said. I'm almost sure I can help you. Unless I'm grossly deceived, I can help you. You won't mind my leaving you for an hour or two. And without waiting for a reply, it soared up through the dimness of the tower into the brightness above. Now, said Cyril firmly, it said an hour or two, but I've read about captives and people shut up in dungeons and catacombs and things awaiting release, and I know each moment is an eternity. Those people always do something to pass the desperate moments. It's no use our trying to tame spiders, because we shan't have the time. I hope not, said Dane doubtfully. But we ought to scratch our names on the stones or something. I say, talking of stones, said Robert, you see that heap of stones against the wall over there in that corner? Well, I'm certain there's a hole in the wall there, and I believe it's a door. Yes, look here, the stones are like an arch, round like an arch in the wall, and here's the hole. It's all black inside. He had walked over to the heap as he spoke and climbed onto it, dislodged the top stone of the heap and uncovered a little dark space. Next moment everyone was helping to pull down the heap of stones, and very soon everyone threw off its jacket, for it was warm work. It is a door, said Cyril, wiping his face, and not a bad thing either if... He was going to add, if anything happens to the phoenix, but he didn't for fear of frightening Jane. He was not an unkind boy when he had leisure to think of such things. The arched hole in the wall grew larger and larger. It was very, very black, even compared with the sort of twilight at the bottom of the tower. It grew larger because the children kept pulling off the stones and throwing them down into another heap. The stones must have been there a very long time, for they were covered with moss, and some of them were stuck together by it, so it was fairly hard work, as Robert pointed out. When the hole reached to about halfway between the top of the arch and the tower, Robert and Cyril let themselves down cautiously on the inside and lit matches. How thankful they felt then that they had a sensible father who did not forbid them to carry matches as some boys' fathers did. Oh boy. Once again, the solution is fire. The father of Robert and Cyril only insisted on the matches being of the kind that strike only on the box. "It's not a door, it's a sort of tunnel," Robert cried to the girls, after the first match had flared up, flickered and gone out. "Stand off, we'll push some more stones down." They did, amid deep excitement, and now the stone heap was almost gone, and before them the girls saw the dark archway leading to unknown things. All doubts and fears as to getting home were forgotten in that thrilling moment. It was like Monte Cristo. It was like, "I say," cried Anthea, even, not Andrea, sorry. "I say," cried Anthea suddenly, "come out. There's always bad air in places that have been shut up. It makes your torches go out and then you die. It's called fire damp, I believe. Come out, I tell you." The urgency of her tone actually brought the boys out, and then everyone took up its jacket and fanned the dark arch with it so as to make the air fresh inside. When Anthea thought the air inside must be freshened by now, Cyril led the way into the arch. The girls followed, and Robert came last because Jane refused to tell the procession lest something should come in after her and catch at her from behind. Cyril advanced cautiously, lighting match after match and peering before him. "It's a vaulting roof," he said, "and it's all stone. All right, Panther, don't keep pulling at my jacket. The air must be all right because of the matches, silly, and there are... Oh, look out, there's stairs down." "Oh, don't let's go any further," said Jane in an agony of reluctance. A very painful thing, by the way, to be in. "I'm sure there are snakes or dens of lions or something. Do let's go back and come some other time with candles and bellows for the fire damp." "Well, let me get in front of you then," said the stern voice of Robert from behind. "This is exactly the place for buried treasure, and I'm going on anyway. You can stay behind if you like." And then, of course, Jane consented to go on. So very slowly and carefully the children went down the steps. There were 17 of them, and at the bottom of the steps were more passages branching 4 ways, and a sort of low arch at the right-hand side made Cyril wonder what it could be for it was too low to be the beginning of another passage. So he knelt down and lit a match, and stooping very low he peeped in. "There's something," he said, and reached out his hand. Pardon me. It touched something that felt more like a damp bag of marbles than anything else that Cyril had ever touched. It was like Monte Cristo. It was like Croque Monsieur. How's the Phoenix going to find you now you've wandered off? Also, why do children carry matches? "I believe it is buried treasure," he cried. And it was, for even as Anthea cried, "Oh, hurry up, Squirrel, we'll fetch it out," Cyril pulled out a rotting canvas bag, about as big as the paper ones the greengrocer gives you with Barcelona nuts in for 6pence. "There's more of it, a lot more," he said. As he pulled the rotten bag, it gave way, and the gold coins ran and span and jumped and bumped and chinked and clinked on the floor of the dark passage. I wonder what you would say if you'd suddenly come across a buried treasure. What Cyril said was, "Oh, bother, I burnt my fingers." And as he spoke, he dropped the match. "And it was the last," he added. There was a moment of desperate silence, and then Jane began to cry. "Oh, don't," said Anthea. "Don't, pussy. You'll exhaust the air if you cry. We can get out all right." "Yes," said Jane through her sobs. "And mine the Phoenix has come back and gone away again because it thought we'd gone home some other way, and I wish we hadn't come." Everyone stood quite still. Only Anthea cuddled Jane up to her and tried to wipe her eyes in the dark. "Don't, that's my ear. I'm not crying with my ears." "Come, let's go on out," said Robert. But that was not so easy, for no one could remember exactly which way they'd come. It's very difficult to remember things in the dark unless you have matches with you, and then of course it's quite different even if you don't strike one. Everyone had come to agree with Jane's constant wish, and despair was making the darkness blacker than ever, when quite suddenly the floor seemed to tip up, and a strong sensation of being in a whirling lift came upon everyone. All eyes were closed. One's eyes always are in the dark, don't you think? When the whirling feeling stopped, Cyril said, "Earthquakes!" and they opened their eyes. They were in their own dingy breakfast room at home, and oh, how light and bright and safe and pleasant and altogether delightful it seemed after that dark underground tunnel. The carpet lay on the floor, looking as calm as though it has never been for an excursion in its life. On the mantelpiece stood the phoenix, waiting with the air of a modest yet sterling worth for the thanks of the children. "But how did you do it?" they asked, when everyone had thanked the phoenix again and again. "Oh, I just went and got a wish from your friend the Psammead." "But how did you know where to find it?" "I found that out from the carpet. These wishing creatures always seem to know all about each other. They're so clannish, like the Scots, you know, all related." "But the carpet can't talk, can it?" "No." "Then how did I get the Psammead's address?" "I tell you, I got it from the carpet." "Did it speak then?" "No," said the phoenix thoughtfully. "It didn't speak, but I gathered my information from something in its manner. I was always a singularly observant bird." It was not till after the cold mutton and the jam tart, as well as the tea and bread and butter, that anyone found time to regret the golden treasure which had been left scattered on the floor of the underground passage, and which indeed no one had thought of till now, since the moment when Cyril burnt his fingers at the flame of the last match. "Oh, what gals and goats we were," said Robert. "Look how we've always wanted treasure, and now—" "Never mind," said Anthea, trying as usual to make the best of it. "We'll go back again and get it all, and then we'll give everybody presents." More than a quarter of an hour passed most agreeably in arranging what presents should be given to whom, and when the claims of generosity had been satisfied, the talk ran for 50 minutes on what they would buy for themselves. It was Cyril who broke in on Robert's almost too technical account of the motor car on which he meant to go to and from school. "There, dry up, it's no good. We can't ever go back. We don't know where it is." "Don't you know?" Jane asked the phoenix wistfully. "Not in the least," the phoenix replied in a tone of amiable regret. "And we've lost the treasure," said Cyril. And they had. "But we've got the carpet in the phoenix." "Oh, no, sorry, wrong voice. But we've got the carpet in the phoenix," said Anthea. "Excuse me," said the bird, with a air of wounded dignity. "I do so hate to seem to interfere, but surely you must mean the phoenix and the carpet." Right. So, I will leave it there. What do you think so far? How these children have survived to this age is anybody's guess, quite frankly. They are wonderful. So, we've got Jane, aka Pussy. No, not like that. The youngest. Well, the youngest who isn't a baby. The baby is the lamb. We've got Anthea, the panther, who I think is the next one up. Robert, Bobs. And Cyril, Squirrel, who is the oldest. You think their guardian angels are working overtime to keep them alive? Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would have taken the matches away from them after they nearly burned the house down. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm worried. I really am. So, it's a bit more performance-y, this book, I'm finding. Which I hope is going okay. It's a little bit different to how I normally do a reading. So, yeah. We shall see. I think the carpet has a certain degree of sarcasm to it, by the way. It doesn't say anything, but I think it's I think it is definitely a sentient thing. Here you are putting childproof latches on the door to the laundry room now to keep your cat out. Yes, but do you give your children matches? You give the young people around you matches and know where the paraffin is, and who keeps a jam jar around? Just in case you need to fill it with paraffin. Also, the cupboard under the stairs is scary because that's basically full of fuel and cloths which are soaked in said fuel, which can then act as wicks. So this is fantastic. The text itself is sassy in the standard narration. I love her turn of phrase. Absolutely adore it. It's very naturalistic. And for something turn of the century, it's incredibly modern. It just has that feel to it. That she also, of course, wrote The Wedding of John Charrington, which I did a few weeks back. And again, that had a very naturalistic feel to it. It doesn't have the slightly stiff dialogue. That's an awful lot of older books tend to. And the characters are very three-dimensional. You know, they're not perfect children. They're not your Pevensies. But equally, they're not bad children. You know, they maybe don't think things through, but then, you know, what 10-year-old does? And the Phoenix is just snotty. I just love the idea that he got them out by going, yeah, I went else the Psammead. And you can just imagine the Psammead just face palming. Can't you? It's just, they've done what? They did what now? Okay. So, I love that. For some reason, when I was a kid and I watched, I think 1980s, possibly even 70s adaptation, I think it was 80s, of The Phoenix and the Carpet, for some reason I had it in my head that the Phoenix was the one that could grant wishes, rather than the Carpet. I just love the idea that the Phoenix has no more idea about wishes than they do. Or at least about the capabilities of the Carpet than they do. But being basically immortal, it also really doesn't care. It's not that bothered. Dignity is its watchword. So, I will be back to this next week, and we will be on chapter 3, The Queen Cock. The aftermath of the Saturday. So the story next week will pick up on the Sunday. I think any day that the parents come home from work or parties and things and find that their house is still standing, they probably just count that as a win. You know? Is anybody dead on the front porch? No? Okay, we're going to go for it then. So, thank you very much indeed for listening. And I will leave you guys to it. Next week hopefully I will be back at the 6:30 mark. For this, I will update on my Discord channel though. And of course, if you wish, you can follow me or you can subscribe to my YouTube if you feel like it, which is also called Druttercup because I'm unimaginative. The house would probably stand a better chance if they took the kids with them. Yes. Yeah, but can you honestly imagine the children at a party with their parents, somewhere crowded, with candles, curtains, flammable stuff? I'm just thinking that, did their ancestors used to live and run a bakery in London, 1600s. Right. Thank you very much indeed. And I will see you guys next week. With bad form as a guest to burn down the host house. Picky, picky, picky. Okay. Goodbye, chaps. And thank you very much indeed. Good night.